Lena Ward returned to her mountain hometown on a quiet afternoon when the sky looked soft and pale, as if it didn't want to disturb anyone. The town was small, the kind where people noticed everything, even the way a person breathed. The moment Lena stepped off the bus, she felt the familiar weight of eyes on her. The same way morning fog settles on the ground without asking permission. She tried to pretend she didn't see the curious glances. She kept her shoulders straight, held her small suitcase close, and walked toward the road that led home. She had been away for months, caring for her elderly aunt in another county. That was the reason everyone believed she left, but people in small towns always guess far more than they know. While Lena walked down the road, she already had the strange feeling that something had changed here. It was in the way the women stopped talking when she passed. It was in the way an older man, sweeping dust off the porch of the hardware shop, lifted his eyebrows with mild surprise, as though seeing her return stirred some new question in his mind. She knew she would have to face the whispers eventually. She simply hoped they would take a few days to start. But the town did not wait. By evening, as Lena unpacked her things in her small rented house near the edge of the woods, the talk had already begun. A young woman seen alone for months, returning with a quieter expression, with tired eyes, with a careful hand resting on her stomach when she thought no one was watching. People noticed these things, and people talked. Someone whispered to someone else that Lena looked a little different. Someone else said her clothes seemed looser than before. Another person insisted they heard from a friend that Lena had visited a doctor out of town. Very quickly, the imagination of the town grew larger than the truth, as it often does in close places with slow days. She's with child. One voice said quietly in the corner of the cafe. She must be, another replied. But whose? Someone added, and that was the moment everything took a new direction. For Lena, the days passed with a fragile blend of calm and worry. She knew people talked, but she did not know the details. She only felt the difference in the air, gentle on some days, heavy on others. She kept her routine simple. She visited her aunt's old friends, bought groceries, and walked to the community center to read books. She tried to live quietly, hoping the whispers would dissolve on their own. It was during one of these simple mornings that the story of her life shifted unexpectedly. The sun had barely risen when Lena walked into the general store. It was a warm, welcoming place with wooden floors that creaked and shelves that smelled faintly of pine. The store owner, Mrs. Rowley, greeted her with a small smile. But even that smile carried the shape of a question behind it. Lena thanked her softly and moved through the aisles, choosing flour, tea, and a few candles for the house. Behind her, a group of townspeople gathered near the register, 3 women and an older man. They thought they were whispering quietly, but the store was too small, the morning too still, and their curiosity too sharp. She looks it. One woman murmured, "I told you," another replied. Someone said she was away because of this. "Poor girl," a third voice said. But who's the father? No one knows. Lena froze. She stood between the shelf of canned soup and the display of fresh bread, holding a small bag of sugar in her hands. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from embarrassment. She had known people were talking, but hearing her life discussed like a town puzzle felt different. She wanted to turn around and tell them to stop, but her words were stuck. She felt her face warming and her throat tightened. She wished she could simply disappear. Before she could move, the store's door opened. The bell above it rang with a long, echoing chime. Everyone looked up. Cal Bennett stepped inside. Cal was not often seen in town. He lived high up in the mountains in a small cabin surrounded by tall trees and quiet air. He came down only when he needed supplies, which was not often. People respected him, partly because he kept to himself, and partly because there was something steady and unshakable about him. He wasn't loud or unfriendly, just private. Some said he liked trees better than people. Some said he simply enjoyed peace. Cal walked with calm steps toward the back of the store. He was tall, with kind but serious eyes, and a gentle patience in the way he moved. He didn't greet anyone except Mrs. Rowley, who gave him a polite nod. He was reaching for a bag of coffee when he heard it, the whisper. The same rumor spoken again, but this time louder. Because someone thought Lena had left the aisle. She's with child, the older man said softly, but not quietly enough. She must be one of the women. Replied. Kel turned his head slightly. She won't say a word. About the father, another added. Which makes it all the more interesting. Lena felt her stomach twist. She set the sugar down on the shelf, wanting to walk away, wanting to leave the whole town behind her. The whispers continued, as though they had no idea she could still hear them. But someone else heard. Kel took a slow breath, set down the coffee he was holding, and walked toward the group near the counter. His steps were steady, not rushed, and each one seemed to quiet the room a little more. The group didn't notice him until he was standing only a few feet away. 5 pairs of eyes lifted. The whispers died instantly. Kel looked at them, then at Lena standing frozen between the shelves. His gaze softened when he saw her expression, hurt, embarrassed, trying to keep herself together. He faced the group again, his voice calm, deep, and unmistakably clear. If she is, he said, pausing long enough for every heart to stop for a second. It's mine. Silence filled the store. Not the simple silence of a quiet morning, but the full, wide silence that comes when a truth, real or imagined, changes the air. The older man blinked. One woman's mouth fell open. Another glanced at Lena with sudden surprise. Thoughts raced through everyone's eyes, but no one dared to speak. Lena felt her breath catch. Her hand went to her chest in disbelief. She stared at Cal, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Why would he say such a thing? Why would he step into rumors that had nothing to do with him? Cal did not look at her right away. He simply stood there, calm and steady as always, as though his words were the most natural thing in the world. He didn't lift his voice or add anything dramatic. He didn't glare or scold. He only offered a simple statement, spoken like someone telling the weather. People in the store didn't know what to do with that. The rumor had shifted in one breath, and no one knew how to shape it now. After a long moment, Cal picked up his coffee, nodded politely to Mrs. Rowley, and carried his items to the counter. When the store owner rang up his purchase, she tried not to stare too much, but even she looked puzzled. Lena finally moved, her steps slow and uncertain. She walked to the counter, her thoughts swirling like wind before a storm. She wanted to ask Cal why he said that. She wanted to tell him he didn't need to involve himself, but she couldn't speak. Not yet. Cal didn't look at her, but he stood quietly beside her, as though silently offering a shield between her and the watching eyes. The whispers had stopped completely, but a heavier kind of curiosity had taken their place. When Cal finished paying, he turned to leave. Only when he reached the door did he glance back at Lena, just a brief look, gentle and steady, as if to say she wasn't alone, even if she didn't understand why. Lena watched him leave, her heart still unsteady. She felt the quiet store around her shifting in a new way, as though everyone was waiting for her next breath. She had come to buy flour and tea, but she walked out with something far more complicated, something she had never expected. A mountain man, silent, private, and unexpected, had just changed her entire story with one simple sentence. Cal's words stayed in the air long after he walked out of the store. It felt as if the whole building held its breath, unsure how to return to normal. Lena stood frozen, her thoughts moving in too many directions at once. She knew people whispered about her, but she never imagined someone like Cal Bennett would become part of that whisper. She barely knew him, only a few short conversations shared long ago, spoken softly and forgotten by everyone except maybe him. When she finally stepped out of the general store, the sunlight felt brighter than before, almost too bright. She held her small paper bag of groceries close to her chest and walked down the quiet road toward her house, her steps slower than usual. She kept thinking about Cal, why he said what he said, what he meant, and what he believed would happen now. She did not want any trouble for him. She did not want more rumors for herself. And she especially didn't want people to think something that wasn't true. But she also remembered the look in his eyes, the gentle steadiness, the way he seemed to understand more than she had spoken. That look stayed with her longer than the rumor. As she walked, she noticed two neighbors whispering by a porch. When they saw her, they stopped and smiled politely. The smile felt different, curious, but softer than before. She knew exactly why. By the time she reached her little house near the woods, she felt tired in a way she could not explain. She set her groceries down on the small wooden table and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. The room was quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She needed answers, or at least some clarity, and there was only one person who could give her that. The next morning, she took a deep breath, wrapped a light scarf around her shoulders, and followed the thin path into the woods, the one she knew led upward into the mountains. She had never gone all the way to Cal's cabin before, but she knew where it was. Everyone knew, in the same way everyone knew everything in a small town. The walk was peaceful, though her heart wasn't. The trees swayed gently above her, and the soft crunch of leaves under her feet helped calm her nerves. Birds chirped from branches high above, and the morning breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh soil. She tried to focus on these things so she wouldn't overthink what she was about to do. When she saw the cabin through the trees, her breath caught slightly. It was simple but warm-looking, built with strong hands and quiet patience. Smoke drifted from the chimney, and a small wooden bench sat near the door. She hesitated at the edge of the clearing, unsure if she should turn back. But before she could move, the door opened. Cal stepped out, holding a mug of warm tea. He paused when he saw her, surprise flickering in his eyes, though he did not look startled, more as if he had been expecting someone without knowing who. Lena took a small step forward. I hope I'm not disturbing you." Cal shook his head gently. "Not at all." She walked closer, her hands clasped together. "I came because I need to understand why you said what you said yesterday." Cal nodded slowly, as if he had prepared himself for this question. He set his mug on the bench and leaned lightly against the porch railing, his expression calm. "You didn't owe me anything," Lena said quietly. "Why would you say those words? People will believe them. They already do." Cal looked toward the trees for a moment before speaking. "They were hurting you? They were talking like your life was a story they could shift around however they wanted." "I didn't like seeing that." Lena felt her eyes sting for a moment, though she blinked the feeling away quickly. "You could have told them to stop. You didn't have to say something like that." Cal finally met her gaze, and there was a softness that she didn't expect. Sometimes the only way to stop a rumor is to give it a new direction, one that keeps the person safe. She didn't speak right away. She simply watched him, trying to understand the quiet layers in his voice. Cal continued, "I didn't say it to claim anything. I didn't say it to create trouble. I said it because you looked alone in that moment, and no one should feel alone when the whole town is talking." Lena lowered her head, her fingers twisting together. "But now they're talking about you too." He shrugged gently. "I've lived with quiet company for years. A few words won't change much for me." Lena swallowed softly. "I haven't told anyone the truth, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't know how to face everyone. Yes, I am with child, but the father, he decided he wasn't ready. Before I left to care for my aunt, he said he needed time to think. He never came back." Cal listened without interrupting, his expression warm and calm, never judgmental. "I didn't want anyone's pity," she whispered. "I didn't want the town to treat me differently." Cal nodded. "You deserve kindness, not pity, and certainly not gossip." Lena looked up, studying him with quiet gratitude. "Why do you care so much?" Cal's answer came slowly, truthfully. "Because months ago, before you left town, we talked once. Just a small moment. I don't think you remember." Lena frowned slightly, thinking back. Then a memory surfaced the day she went hiking near the foothills and sprained her ankle slightly. Cal had appeared out of nowhere, guided her gently back to the trail, and asked if she needed help returning home. They talked for only a few minutes. She remembered thinking he had a calm voice, the kind that made people feel safe. "I remember," she said softly. "That moment mattered to me," Cal admitted quietly. "You were kind when you didn't have to be. You thanked me more times than necessary. You smiled at me like I wasn't someone who stayed hidden in the mountains. People don't often do that." Lena's heart felt warm in a way she didn't expect. She didn't know her small kindness had stayed with him. Cal stepped aside and gestured to the bench. Would you like to sit? She nodded and joined him. The air felt peaceful, calmer than she had felt in weeks. They talked for a long time, not about rumors or fear, but about simple things, the weather, her aunt, his cabin, the mountains, and how life sometimes takes unexpected turns. For the first time since she returned home, Lena felt like she wasn't carrying everything alone. The weight inside her eased, even if only a little. When she finally stood to leave, Cal walked her a few steps down the path. If the town becomes too much, he said gently, you can always come here. You don't have to face this all alone. Lena looked at him with sincere warmth. Thank you. I really mean that. As she walked away, she felt something settle inside her, not fear, but comfort. Over the next few days, the town's whispers changed. They were still curious, still surprised, but they were less sharp than before. Cal's quiet presence around town changed the way people spoke. When he walked into a room, conversations softened, not because he asked them to, but because he carried a calm authority that reminded people to be more gentle. And slowly, the way the townspeople looked at Lena shifted too. Some offered warm smiles. Others brought small gifts, fresh bread, homemade jam, whereupon baby socks. For the first time, the town's attention didn't feel heavy. It felt supportive. One afternoon, Lena sat on her porch, watching the sun paint the mountains in soft gold. She thought about everything that had happened, the whispers, the fear, Cal's surprising words, and the quiet strength he had offered since. She realized something important. Family was not always made by blood or promises. Sometimes, it was made by the people who chose to stand beside you when life felt too heavy to carry alone. As if sensing her thoughts, Cal appeared on the path, carrying a small basket of fresh apples. When he reached her porch, he simply smiled and said, "Thought you might like these." Lena smiled back, her heart light and safe. In that simple moment, she knew her story hadn't become harder. It had become stronger, and she wasn't walking through it alone anymore.